The GDPR, it is an acronym for the General Data Protection Regulation, and it is new legislation coming out of the European Union, which doesn't take effect until May 25th, 2018. Companies need that much time to get ready for this massive new piece of legislation. Although the law is focused ostensibly on how you protect an individual's personal data, it really is a brilliant piece of legislation that is much broader or higher than data protection or privacy. It encompasses privacy. It really gives legislative guidance to organizations about how to manage and govern their data that they collect. It's all about good data hygiene, knowing what you collect and how you use it and doing the right things with it. That's what this law is. After a almost 5-year political and legislative process throughout the EU, the output, the result is this law, is this legislation. And it really is an overhaul of the EU's aging data protection laws, most of them country-specific. They didn't take into account new technologies that have developed since then. So it was high time to overhaul the data protection laws. The aim is simple and noble. The aim is to put personal data back in the control of the individuals, power to the people. A secondary purpose is give certainty to companies that need to comply with data protection laws in the EU, so they only have to comply with one set of privacy rules. But what is the GDPR? So it reinforces the Europeans' notion that privacy is a fundamental human right. And by doing that, it creates new rights for the individual. But before we talk about the individual, I just want to share with you how it impacts companies. First of all, the brilliance of this law is that it extends far beyond the EU's borders. If a company offers its services to an EU resident, the law applies. So in essence, that's pretty much everybody. The second thing is that the risks of non-compliance with the law are really high. Companies who think that what's the risk for me not complying or being in the herd or not getting ahead of this thing and taking it seriously, enforcement is going to be robust and it's going to be serious and going to be right out of the gates. And penalties for non-compliance, depending on a transgression, can be as high as up to 4% of a company's global gross revenue, or up to 20 million euros, depending on the violation. There's a lower level of fines up to 10 million euros or 2% of a company's gross revenue, but either way, those are huge numbers. What is the law all about? It really is requiring companies to do two things. It's requiring companies to be introspective and look inward at all of their practices and get a full picture, comprehensive understanding of what they collect and how they use it and how these little bits of data flow through their organization. Examples, companies need to know what their customer service representatives are collecting and how they're collecting it. Name, address, account number, whatever the case may be. Companies need to know what personal data is being collected to fulfill orders. They need to know what personal data is being collected on websites, on apps, on connected devices. Just a full comprehensive understanding of all your collection points, types of things collected, and how you use it. That's certainly a reasonable expectation, but the reality is it's really hard for companies to have that knowledge, that inward-facing knowledge. Companies are going to have to take this seriously and do very thorough gap analyses to get that understanding. The second thing that the law requires companies to do is, after they've had that introspective review, is turn outward and be able to be transparent and communicate what their practices are, what they collect, how they use it, and why. They need to be transparent and communicate that clearly to their customers, but also to their employees. And it's that outward-facing bit that is the key to the whole law. So what are these new individual rights as well as these obligations upon companies? Examples of these new individual rights that are codified under the GDPR. An individual has a right to access her personal data. And this person is empowered through this right to access to have the data corrected. Also, related to that, person has a right to say, give me my data. It's called the right to portability. A new right is a right to what's called right to erasure. Some used to call it right to be forgotten. Interestingly, another aspect of the GDPR is many companies track and do analytics on their websites, apps, digital properties, and they derive a lot of revenue from this. And the law recognizes that this is an important revenue stream for many organizations. And it doesn't prohibit that activity, but it says if you're going to track individuals or if you're going to allow third parties on your websites to track them, the Europeans call that profiling, then you have to do it the right way. What the Europeans say is you have to get the user's consent. You can profile or track someone, but if you are going to make a decision about that person that has a legal effect, then you have to, before you can track them, you have to get their explicit opt-in consent. If you're just going to track them to serve them advertisements, then you can do that, but you have to tell them about it in a clear, concise, understandable way, and give them the ability to opt out of that profiling or that tracking.